Well, good morning and welcome to Zen Live. Another hot day in Blackstone, and I've still got one lawn to mow. I don't know if I'll mow it today or not. So let's pick up with get right to our Eckhart Tolle quote. And for those of you just dropping in, I use a quote from Eckhart Tolle to kind of like give a little direction to the talk, and because the talks are explorations. These talks are Dharma trail talks. In other words, we're following the scent of the Dharma, or truth, and we're picking up clues in everyday mind, in everyday world, in your world, in my world, like a hunter picks up the clues of his prey, a twig, a footprint, some spoor, or some left anything, or clues for the explorer, you see, or the detective inspector. We like mysteries because they are following the clues until you have enough clues where you get a big bang. Oh, I know who did it. Now that is, let's listen to the quote first. The next step in human evolution is not inevitable, but for the first time in the history of our planet, it can be a conscious choice. Who is making that choice? You are. And who are you? Consciousness that has become conscious of itself. Consciousness that has become conscious of itself. So, well, my nose starts itching. So I thought we'd take a look at evolution, because in the West, in our material world, our idea of evolution is limited to the material world. So it doesn't include consciousness. It doesn't include you. And obviously our bodies are no longer evolving unless we end up with longer fingers, because we just use them on the computer. Those with longer fingers will operate the computer faster, so they will select other people with longer mates with longer fingers, and so we will evolve. That's stupid. You see, so our idea of evolution is very limited, and that's why religious people have come up with ideas like creative design or Genesis or whatever, because our material evolution theory of evolution is limited. It doesn't answer the questions. There are too many things left unanswered. So I've been watching the Indian series called The Story of the Buddha on Netflix, and you have to go about halfway through before Siddhartha actually becomes the Buddha. But the whole point, there's well, it's Bollywood and Indian movies and all that. It has a wide angle meaning to me. Because one of the, now of course I'm not just learning about the Buddha from this movie, but some of the messages from the movie is that Buddha tried asceticism and it didn't work. Now, we have to get a wide angle view. If you look at the East and the West, the East is much older than the West. I mean, when the Buddha was born, in what was called by Carl Jaspers, called it the Axial Age. That time, around 600 years before Christ, created all of the sages, all of the systems that we're still operating within today. Confucius, Lao Tse, Zarathustra, the Upanishads, the Buddha, the yoga systems. In the West, Socrates, the Greek philosophers, Greek theater. All of these were like lotus blossoms of consciousness rising out of the mud and the water, you see. So these lotus consciousness that we're still trying to figure out, you could say, is the evolution of consciousness. And these were the first flowers. These were the first lotus flowers. And now, on the internet, all of the wisdom of these sages of the ages is just a click away. And we're just clicking around like crazy, talking it up on Facebook, checking, corresponding, arguing, being enlightened by each other. It's amazing. When you look at what the social media is bringing to the table in this great smorgasbord of these ancient Eastern teachings and modern teachings. So it's not just, But you have to look, putting on our wide-angle lens here, you have to see the difference between the East and the West and what's happening now. In the East, going back thousands of years, the effort was to turn within and find the higher evolved consciousness of man. So you have to understand evolution as a drive to create greater unities. That's what evolution is. When there is a conflict between a species and the environment, the species evolves to accommodate the new conditions. Well, this is the MacGyver principle. I always come back to MacGyver. So he's in a fix. The environment has limited him. He has to evolve. He has to get out of this fix. So he creates a tool out of what's given to evolve. That's just a metaphor for evolution. Evolution creates a new unity that incorporates or enfolds the previous conflict. And it restores peace with the environment, with the world. So right there you can get a clue as to what's happening, is that we have the Western mind has evolved to its limitations and has created an environment which is unsustainable. We have created a earth with a fever and it's getting hotter. And that's unsustainable. Well, who did that? Well, it's our particular materialistic consciousness that has created this great civilization. But like Clint Eastwood said, a man should know his limitations. Okay, so we're discovering our limitations, which means wake up, it's time to evolve. Wake up, it's time to make a leap, you see. And so we have, after the 50s and the 60s, there was a great crack in our materialistic exterior world, and the Eastern teachings flooded in. And they're still flooding in. But not as dramatic and as rapturous as it did in the 60s, because our poor little Western ego wasn't able to handle the truth. We couldn't handle the truth, this energy, so it got distorted and created a backlash. Whoa, which is the conservative movement. Control those hippies. Get those women back in the kitchen. Put those black people back in the elevator and put them back in service roles. Restore America. Well, that of course is not sustainable either. So what is sustainable? Evolution will evolve to create a sustainable world, but then that too reaches its limitations and divides into conflict which stimulates a new evolutionary movement. And so it goes. Boom, boom, boom. Greater wholes, you see. So anyway, I guess the point we're making here is that going back to the Netflix movie on Buddha, the basic message was he tried the ascetic movements of the day, which was denial of the body and the body's desires. So this denial of the world was the first movement in India. And the Jains were kind of like the personification of that. It was in other words, if you wanted to evolve your consciousness, you had to withdraw from the world. Live in a monastery, live in the woods with your teacher, and reduce your food, reduce your physical needs down to basically a bowl and a robe. So you reduced everything down to a begging bowl, and even then, if nobody gave you any food, you wouldn't eat. So the idea was to be like a feather, like Forrest Gump. You just move with the wind, and if the wind didn't provide you with food, you wouldn't eat. It's kind of like hitchhiking. I hitchhiked across the country in 1956, and that was big in the 50s. Jack Kerouac and the idea of the open road and the thumb. And the whole idea around hitchhiking was that you surrendered to the road and you stuck out your begging thumb. And if nobody gave you a ride, you didn't go anywhere. So you were dependent upon the winds, you see. You were dependent upon the winds. You were not going to, you were dependent upon a sailboat. You weren't going to get a power boat. You were dependent upon a horse. You weren't going to get a car, you see. So this, or walking rather. So this whole idea, of surrender can be found in many of our metaphors or paths, But this whole idea of denial, Buddha tried from the inside, and it didn't work. And that's an important. This is. Did you watch The Life of Pi? And The Life of Pi basically was a story of the Buddha. And Pi, as a young man, had questions, and he tried Hinduism. He tried Christianity. He tried, I think he tried Islam. But in other words, he tried religions, not studying them in comparative religions like we do in the universities, comparing one with the other objectively. No. He tried them out subjectively. He became a Christian, totally. He became a Hindu, totally. And he still had questions. So he evolved, and then he went to college and tried rational philosophy, Western philosophy, Western science. And that didn't. No, that didn't work. So then he was ready for the interior adventure of the Buddha. He had tried all the systems of the day. They were all limited. He couldn't evolve. There was no evolution. They all said, stay here with me. When I was in the Navy, I joined the Navy in 1956, basically to find out what I wanted to do with my life. And I became a sonarman. And the sonarman this is very interesting. The surface, I'm really digressing, but I don't care. So, the surface Navy and the submarine Navy have become metaphorical different universes to me. On the surface ship, you identified everything visually. You described everything visually. Oh, there's a ship, it's a destroyer, it's a merchant, see it. But underneath the ocean, you can't see anything. So the sonarman was the ears of the submarine. And I, as a sonarman, I couldn't see a ship. I could hear the ship. And I would interpret the sound. That's a merchant ship. And you could tell. You could interpret that sound and tell how far it was, where it was going, coming toward you or away, loaded, empty. And then you could hear the screws of, say, a destroyer. Really fast, you see. So there was the sonar interpreted the world, you see. And on the surface, you didn't interpret. You described. Through visual sight, you could see what it was. So anyway, I forgot my train of thought now. Let me go back. So anyway, we're looking at the how do we trigger our evolution, and we know we need to evolve when we're stuck, and we are repeating ourselves like in the movie Groundhog Day. So this is not just big cosmic things here. This is everyday things. We get stuck in our everyday life when we have suffering, when we have negativity, worry, irritation, negative restlessness, boredom, envy, greed, anger. All of these are clues that we need to evolve. We need to wake up and evolve. We've run up against the limitations of our current worldview. And once you run up against the limitations of your worldview, what do? You start recycling. If you drop a rock in a pond, the ripples expand until they hit the limitations of the pond, then they come back. And when they come back, it creates turmoil and chaos. Because now you've got two ripples going out and ripples coming back, and it goes like that. You need to evolve. You need to get a bigger pond. You need to get a bigger boat, you see. That's the clue. So, Buddha ran up against the limitations of asceticism and withdrawal from the world. I will not be involved, you see. And spirituality runs into this too, because I know with a spiritual ego or intellect, let's put it that way, people who are intellectually heavy, thinkers, will develop a spiritual, intellectual ego, where I know more than anyone else, you see. And there develops then a sense of aloofness or detachment, under the belief that detachment from the world is transcending the world. That's a false worldview, a false idea. It's a false idol, because it's created your sense of superior self as an idol. And we're deceived by it because we obviously have learned more than other people, and detachment from the world is, according to even the Buddha, even the misunderstood Buddha, is that this withdrawal from the attachments of the world, from desires, you see, and all that, is spiritual. So naturally, being detached is a superior state. Well, we all know these people. They're not so superior. They're quite arrogant. They're quite arrogant, in their superiority. And of course, you have material superiority and spiritual superiority. The material superiority is the guy in the Cadillac. And the spiritual superiority is the guy who knows all about Buddha and tells you when you're wrong. You see, so one of the clues then of superiority is when you know what's right and what's wrong. and the other one is wrong and I'm right. Anyway, it's time to evolve. So, what is evolution? And let's get back to grounded by Tolle here. So Tolle says, evolution, human is, and he said the next step in human evolution is not inevitable. Well, now what he's talking about there's two ways to look at that. Human evolution as a whole, or your evolution. Now, I always look at the subjective and not the objective. So I'm not really interested in the evolution of humanity. I'm interested in my evolution. That's where I live. And actually, that's the only thing that can evolve. I cannot make the world evolve, and I can't make myself evolve. Now, I know we all try that, but you can't make yourself be different than you are. You can pretend. So evolution really means being a different way of being in the world. It's not just getting more knowledge, learning more, becoming superior. It's changing the way you are in the world so that you experience the world differently. You see the world differently. And this is all in these stories of enlightenment. Even the Buddha, when Siddhartha sits under the tree and he goes through the stages of enlightenment, and it's like getting rid of cataracts. I recommend that to everybody. Not because just so you can get rid of them. Because cataracts are interesting because they gradually cloud the world. So you think this is the way everything is. And then suddenly you reach the point where you really need to evolve and restore your sight. So you have a little operation. They put the bandages on. And I know this, they only do one at a time, but let's pretend they do both at the same time. Do that, and then suddenly, boom, and oh my God. Everything is HD TV. I used to be looking at the world on an old snowy antenna. Now, wow, it's HD TV. I see the colors, the crispness, the beauty of the world, the sharpness. Oh my God, you see. And then, in a while, it becomes everyday world. It's like getting a new kitchen. Oh my God, come see my kitchen. And in a while, it's just your everyday kitchen. But anyway. So this whole idea of awakening is seeing differently. Seeing the world different. The world is still the same, you just see it differently. So that's the evolution of consciousness, is through seeing. Seeing differently, you see. Not changing your body, not changing your physical place, not changing your conditions, but seeing the same old conditions differently in a wondrous way. Movies do that all the time. Go look at Avatar. What's Avatar about? Wonder. Oh my God, look at the floating mountains. Oh my God, look at the flowers on Pandora. Aren't they beautiful? Oh my God, you see. Cataracts gone. The world is wonderful, a beauty wonderful again, you see. Seeing the world through the eyes of a child, That whole idea of, and that is the awakening of consciousness. Now Tolle goes on to say that consciousness, the evolution of consciousness evolved to where consciousness that has become conscious of itself. All right, one more point then before we close up, is that the Eastern exploration, the Eastern quest for the evolution of consciousness was inward, like in the movies that you go to the center of the earth. So you got two kinds of quests. You have a quest that goes to the center of the earth, or you have the quest that goes to the farthest reaches of you. Well, the Western quest for enlightenment, the Western quest for the evolution of consciousness has been exterior. Conquering, exploring new worlds, the expanding circle. Boom, Lewis and Clark. Space, shooting a big sperm into the, a big rocket into the womb of the cosmos. You know, I'm going to plant myself in there. This whole idea of expansion materially. And it drives our economy. I'm materially expanded when I have a new kitchen, new sofas, I have a new car, a bigger house. I'm materially evolving. I'm getting more stuff, you see. And of course, now our garages and our attics and our closets are stored with all of our stuff. What would I do if I had to move, you see? I can't move. I've got so much stuff. It keeps coming in. People keep giving me stuff. What am I going to do with this damn thing? You know, I can't give it away. Somebody gave it to me, so I put it on the shelf. And now my shelves are all filled up, and my closets are filled up, and the stuff keeps coming in. I can't move. I can't evolve. And so the monks, you see, just say, no stuff, just give me a bowl. And even that, it's got to be a humble bowl. I don't want it to be better than his bowl, or envy his bowl, you see. So anyway, you got the external expansion of consciousness the way the West has done, which is not saying anything wrong with it. It brought us the air conditioning that I'm enjoying right now. I'm not sitting out there under a tree in 100-degree heat, you see. I've got my comforts. Nothing wrong with that. But then we reached our limitations, and we reached in our own personal life. That's where it's at, in our personal everyday mind. So a shift happens at some point when we realize that we're recycling ourselves. Our world is a recycled world. Same old emotions, same old feelings, different situation, same old emotions and resistance and anger and irritation. And it doesn't matter if it's somebody at Walmart or at the gas station, it's the same old reaction. Whether it's on politics or whatever, it's Groundhog Day. And when we see that, there is going to be a shift. Hey, I need to wake up and evolve. But what's that mean? Well, just the desire to evolve begins to create the evolution. Has to be from the heart, not from the mind, like I could get, boy, I'll be happier if I evolve. No, that isn't it. I need to evolve so I can get out of this fix. No, that isn't it either. The desire to evolve in order to improve yourself in the future is not evolution. It's just changing. But you still got the same worldview. Wherever you go, you take yourself with you. There's no change there. Maybe some temporary change, but then the new kitchen wears off. Maybe the new kitchen wears off. Now I need a new kitchen. The new house wears off. Oh, we need a new house. The relationship wears off. I need a new relationship. Where'd the romance go? You see. So, we're moving towards a shift, and that shift is happening in our Western civilization. It began in the 60s. The search, the desire for a new way of being in the world, because the old one has reached its limitations. Is life today just endless commercials and buying new deodorant and getting so sick that all we want to do is buy new drugs? And look how happy those people are when they take the drugs. I want to be joyous like them. What is that drug? I'll take it. I don't care if the side effects are worse than what I've got now. I want to be happy like those people. You see? And that's the craving and the desire that Buddha said you have to give up. Is the craving for being better than you are right now. The craving to be free from the pain you have right now. So basically the message of the Buddha was to find the center of us that does not that does not suffer in conflict with its environment. So the pain we feel is the attachment to form as the end of our suffering, which is caused by our attachment to form. So when he says here, conscious, who are you? Consciousness that has become conscious of itself. Well, when awareness becomes aware of itself as the center, then the conflict with the world ends. Well, anyway, I'm going to have to stop there because I'm going to run into a whole other thing now, and so I'll end it up there. And the idea that we're working with here is that modern consciousness, this material consciousness, has expanded and conquered the world, and it's conquered stuff, and it's made stuff, and it's made us more comfortable. Great. But it's reached its limit. The consumer society has reached its limitations, and we're hungry for a shift. And the Eastern traditions, which didn't invest in materiality, invested in the interior exploration, are now our guides. So we all of the teachings today come from Eastern sources, come from the work the sages did, the work of the sages of the axial age, the lotus flowers that really represent metaphorically the blooming of the cosmic consciousness, the blooming of the cosmos as consciousness aware of itself. You see, this is the problem with our Western map, is that there's no place for consciousness on it. Everything is a material thing. It's just like everything began as a rock or stardust. And somehow out of stardust, that created consciousness. But consciousness is basically caused by material stuff. And that evolves because of chance or accident or mutations. There's no consciousness in there. There's no me in there. I'm a ghost. You see, there's no value in that. Just a bunch of things. Stardust. There's no value in dust. It's just dust. Ashes to ashes. There's no value there. So there's no consciousness there. There's no meaning there, you see. So we've lost meaning in the modern world. We've lost value in the modern world. So we have to create it through what? False idols. But anyway, now I'm moving into another area. So this whole thing of the Buddha and these sages was to return to center, restore, to discover the center that depends upon no form. To discover the center in me, in I, that does not depend upon identification with form, because form dies. Form is impermanent. So if I cling to any form, I'm impermanent. I have no center. Oh no, don't take away my car. Oh no, don't take away my house. Oh no, don't take away my body. Who will I be? You see, there's nobody there if I take away the form. And that's the plight of the Western consciousness. Take away the form, who am I? You see. Well, you are not form. You are the formless consciousness aware of itself. Empty. Empty, you see. But when you are totally empty, you are also totally full. And we'll leave it with that. Thanks for dropping in.